Yo, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen, club members and non? Another episode of the Astoria Filmmakers Club podcast. My very special guest today, thank you so much for coming, is Mr. Sushant Adlakha.
Thank you for having me. Of course.
Yo, dude, I'm really curious about you because you actually have some accomplishments on your resume right here. How long ago have you been acting?
Well, first, thank you. No, that's so nice. It's one of those things where I think it's been long enough that I'm like, you stop, thinking of any of it as accomplishments. You're always just stuck on like, what am I doing next? But I've been doing it full time for about a year and like 9 months at this point. And then before that was kind of, outside of whatever real work that I was doing. And it was just sort of me kind of learning the ropes, understanding, how to actually act. I still can't say I fully learned, but I think I know more than I did back then. And, it's been fun. I've had a great time so far, for sure.
Well, you never stop learning. There's going to be discoveries in every moment you're acting.
Exactly. No. And it's so nice because like I feel like, with podcasts and stuff in general too, like sometimes if I'm just like walking around or like at the gym or whatever it is, I do actually listen to a lot of like people in the film industry or like, actors and stuff just talking about their career, and like veterans that you would know of are like, they talk about how they don't know what they're doing. So it's very comforting to know that when I feel that way too, I'm like, okay, this is nice. Like, it's okay for me to not like, to feel confident in a certain thing, but never 100% sure. And I think that's usually what just makes it better.
Well, did you do anything prior to becoming an actor?
Yeah. So, I guess for background's sake, I mean, I grew up in India. I was there for the first like 18 years of my life. It was something where like I always watched a lot of Hollywood movies and stuff. So I kind of knew, I'm like, oh, this is what I want to do, but it never felt like a practical reality at that age, I guess. And then when I came to college in America and I was like, on like the economics and then the math and doing all those regular job things, I guess. And I worked in marketing for a while too. But, I think it was one of those things where as I was turning 21, like applying for internships and stuff, and I was like, I know what I actually want to do. Why am I wasting my time trying to work at some big corporation that I, know in my heart is not for me? And so I guess I stopped chasing that and just started chasing something else. And I hope that answers the question.
Well, yeah, man. I mean, like, it's a curious thing. Like, what was have you felt like a true dynamic or like a culture shock by leaving India and coming to the United States?
Definitely. Yeah. I think it was weird because it's like, there is always like a dreamlike quality to this place, and like, we always had that growing up. It was always very aspirational, and I've been very lucky to be able to, even be here. But I think like, there was an adjustment period for sure. Even, whether it's my voice, I didn't sound like this over there. Obviously, we don't speak with an American accent in India. That's not a thing. So it's just like, it took a while for me to,
I wasn't going to say anything, but you sound like you're born and raised in like maybe, I don't know, New Jersey or something like that.
I'm, like you said, I'm constantly acting. So I just have to pretend to be somebody else. It's just like, it's just one of those things that, weirdly enough helped me in the long run in terms of actually performing. But yeah, it took a while, but what I will say though, is like, I grew up in Mumbai, which is like the heart of Bollywood as well. So like cinema and stuff in general has always been a big thing. Like my family loves movies. My brother is a film critic as well. So it's just like,
wow.
we every weekend we'd go for a movie growing up. I remember that. And that sort of just instilled like a kind of excitement about it. I do think Hollywood as an industry is a little more interesting to me. Not that Bollywood isn't amazing and doesn't tell its own stories, which I think are awesome and I'd love to be a part of. But I just think with Hollywood specifically, I think there's a way in which they express ideas that I think is so exciting that I maybe relate to just a little more at this time in my life. So, adjustments or not, I think watching those Hollywood movies growing up was like, oh, someday that would be nice. And I can't believe I'm even here to the point that I'm being, asked to talk about myself. Like, that's kind of crazy.
You know, dude, don't sell yourself short. Like, you're like being in the right place at the right time is, I think, 99% of what we could call success in this whole industry, you know?
Right, for sure. There's just so much like there's an unfortunate thing of waiting sometimes, but like if you're lucky enough to have the capacity and the ability to wait for that time and sort of push through, you know, the mental anguish of that situation, it's so worth it. It is so worth it for sure.
So you had family, at least in the industry. Like, did you ever find yourself critiquing films as well?
I mean, a little bit. Like I think so. My brother's older than me, and it's like, you know, I think he was the one that kind of introduced me to movies. If anything, I remember like I was 12 and he was like so excited about The Dark Knight and everything, and then like wouldn't stop watching the trailer or talking about it. And I'm like, God, you're so obsessed, but this is kind of exciting a little bit, you know? So he sort of like kind of reeled me into all of that. When it came to actually reviewing and talking about stuff, I mean, everyone's had a secret YouTube channel in their life, you know? So could you find it? Did I sound like this? You never know, but maybe I did. Maybe I did.
Well, I mean, did you, when you first came over here, you know, the big shift from Mumbai to New York, did you kind of feel like maybe you're at a disadvantage because of your accent?
You know, I think that was like initially it was just socially. I don't think, unfortunately, at 18, I was thinking so hard about the practicality of a career yet. I think those were thoughts that came in a couple of years into college. But what was really exciting to me, I remember this one time in freshman year, like it was sort of the initial dilemma that I had was, oh, there were like a bunch of people in my college from India and they wanted to, you know, hang out and like, you know, sort of, you know, support each other, be together, you know, listen to some music from home, have Indian food, which I obviously love doing. And then in like my dorm room lounge, there were these film students that wanted to watch Pulp Fiction and talk about it. And I was like, I kind of think the Pulp Fiction thing just seemed more interesting. I didn't go to film school either. So for me, there was a big like intimidation with that, but I don't think the accent thing really, you know, was a thought until much later. But yeah.
When you mentioned The Dark Knight Rises, around that time, there was a Bollywood film that won the Oscar. Have you seen Slumdog Millionaire?
Of course. It's weird. It's like, it's very inspired by Bollywood. The thing is, I think it was produced by like Fox Searchlight. So technically, I don't know what it's classified as, but it was
dancing at the end, bro. It's Bollywood.
No, that's pretty much it. No, exactly. It had the flair, it had the energy, and it was in my home city too. So it was so nice to kind of see like, oh, like I remember as I was 12 and I was like, whoa, this movie's really fun. And like one of the rare times, like also Danny Boyle, who is so like already revered, made like Trainspotting and all that stuff. I was like, wow, he's, you know, they filmed this year. There was like a Bollywood star in the movie too. And I was like, whoa, this is kind of awesome. It was really fun to experience.
Did that kind of spark the flair to maybe try acting?
I mean, yeah, the funny thing too, as well, was like, I did a little bit of theater as a kid, and there was one kid in my theater group at the time who was in Slumdog Millionaire. He was actually like the middle. There's like different ages of them, so he was the middle age of the protagonist, I think. And I was like, oh,
that was that same actor?
That was that same actor. Yeah, exactly.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
So no, not Jamal. Jamal and oh my God.
There's Jamal and Salim. And no, so yeah, I think the one that played like teenage Jamal, like I had met him and like worked with him. I don't know what work was I doing as a 5-year-old, but I had met him before. And it was kind of crazy to actually see him do that. I was like, oh, so there is a pipeline. Like there is a route of that exists. Now, I don't know what that route is, but just that was an idea like, oh, maybe there's a route that exists. And I guess that kept the idea alive, but I think I was just too young still to really start, unfortunately, because that came out when I was 12. So I was not thinking about, I was thinking about like, you know, exams and prom or whatever the hell people think about when they're 12. So yeah, but it definitely was nice to see that like get all the recognition it did.
Have you kept in touch with them?
And no, I mean it was very much just like like, oh, I recognized him. And I think like I bumped into him a few years later and was just like, oh, congratulations. This is awesome. I don't even know if he's acting much anymore that I've heard of, but I mean, if he could, he's really good. I remember him being so good as a kid.
Oh yeah,
too.
like he's
So, yeah.
he's the Celine version of the time he pulled the trigger for the first time and he crushed it.
No, exactly. He's so good. He's so good. So like, you know, he's some part of my childhood, I guess, but it's not like we were like family friends. Like we had, you know, but if I ever were to see him again, I'd be like, yo, how's it going?
You remember me? It's just like, he'll probably remember you right on the spot. Yeah.
I mean, if he's listening to this, then yeah, he'll be like, oh, he made it. He made it. He's on the Astoria Filmmakers Club podcast. This is where it happens.
Facts. All right. shout out. What's the actor's name?
His name is Tanay Chadda.
Chane Shada?
Tanay with a T.
Oh, Tane Shada.
Shout out wherever you are in the world, thinking about you and how awesome you did. He was also in like Bollywood blockbusters and stuff too, like at that age. And I was like, okay, amazing.
Oh, outside of the Bollywood scheme, like
outside of Slumdog Millionaire, like he did a few other projects too. And I will say, like, the one thing maybe to your question, because I've realized I've answered everything tangentially so far, but the one thing to your question is that like what I noticed and what I remember now, maybe only in hindsight, was like amongst all the, oh, congratulations and appreciation, deep down, whether it was in like high school, seeing people put up plays, there was almost an ounce of jealousy associated with it of like, oh, I'm really happy for you, but there's a teeny portion of me that kind of wishes it wasn't you and it was me.
You realize that is an original sin called envy.
Envy. There we go. That's the appropriate word. So yes, I've been sinning since I was very young. If that's the case.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Join the club.
Yes. No, thank you.
I think we all have.
I'm glad I'm not alone.
But I remember like when Life of Pi came out, it was probably not too much longer after that as well. It was closer to like 2000, maybe 13, 14 when Life of Pi came out. They probably saw like thousands of young boys for the role. But it was literally the guy they picked who was not there to audition, just there to bring his cousin to an audition. But he ends up saying, since you're here.
Exactly. What was nuts about that too was like they went to like high schools in India to find people. And I remember also reading for it, like at like maybe 14, because it came out when I was 16. So yeah, there were like, and like one of my friends told me later that he got to the next round and met the director and stuff. But like, I mean, Suraj Sharma has a tendency to, even now, get a lot of roles I audition for. So one of these days, I'm going to find him. One of these days, I'm going to find him on the streets of New York and just give him a piece of my mind. But I'm also very happy for him because, my gosh, he's made such an awesome career. You know, and he did it when he was young, but it wasn't just like, oh, he's a young, fresh face. Like, he's very talented, which I think is just awesome to see.
And he just didn't know it at the time, huh?
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's weird. We're like I guess a director. I mean, Ang Lee's like also so, you know, experienced that I'm sure he could bring it out of you. Like Heath Ledger's big, like first initial, wow, incredible actor. Like, not that he wasn't already incredible, but like sort of elevated was Brokeback Mountain. So it's like, oh, clearly as a director, he is aware of, you know, what an actor's potential is that you may not have seen. And that's kind of true for, yeah, exactly.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was like agreeing. Like, it's like when you got that level of experience and understanding of the script, there's got to be an energy or a vibe that the actor you're in the room with just sparks a confidence within you that I could work with this guy.
Right.
You know,
exactly. It's super important for sure.
So as far as like some of the films that you've done so far, have there been some directors where that chemistry was definitely there?
Yeah, I think there have been a couple of times I would say the times I've really gotten to, you know, do the fun stuff, which is just like kind of truly, it's been in like short films primarily. And, you know, even though you film like over maybe up to a week, what's been nice is like some of the directors have really taken the time in rehearsals. I did this one last year that had like a very strange improv like audition process. And that itself was about like, oh, we want to see what you're capable of and what your instincts are versus like how you say the lines and if you fit the image I had in my head. And because ultimately, like on set, that's so much more important because, you know, like as much as it's like, yeah, I could come in and just do what you thought you wanted. It's sort of my job to like show you what you didn't know was possible and then test it out.
Sure. That's got to be challenging though, because I'm not like I'm no director by any form of the definition. Like my background mostly has been in acting, but do you ever find it? Do you ever get discouraged? Like maybe if you didn't get the role, it's because they were already married to an idea of something before, like actually, I guess creating this whole new discovery of character development with the actor who's got the talent.
I mean, maybe there's been like a role or two. In a general sense, no. I think in a general sense, like you wind up auditioning for so many things, you just kind of accept, okay, it's about the vibe, it's about the energy, you know. I think primarily when it comes to like network television stuff and they're looking for like a very small part, like the look dominates everything else for those things. And it's like, okay, like you know what I look like from my photo. You know, like you don't need me to read if you're doubtful about me. And it's like, I guess there have been instances where like, it's like, oh, play an Indian character, right? Which is totally cool. Like they probably don't have a ton of submissions to begin with, but I'm also aware that I don't like strike, you know, people as like are having the stereotypical Indian look either. So it's like, okay, they're going to wind up casting that anyway. Like, why am I doing this? But it's still fun to do, get in front of them. But ultimately, yeah, I think that's maybe the only situation. Honestly, though, I don't think so. If someone's casting based off like, oh, I had this idea and I'm not open to other things, then maybe that's just their process, you know, but it's nothing I can take personally, I guess.
So as far as like your up and coming movies, I was taking a look at your resume and not bad for 4 or 5 years. Like you're working. You got Going Nowhere. You got Butch Please, Insta
Right.
Guys. That actually looks kind of funny. And you got Code Red, Planet Earth.
Sure. I guess like of the two I'd love to highlight, because a couple of them are still like pre-production. Like I don't know too much. I don't know how much I can say really. I think the only like
it's on IMDb, dude.
It's on IMDb. That's true. That's true.
There's no NDA that I'm not looking at, but I'm not gonna.
No, for sure.
Like, go ahead, buddy.
I mean, I didn't sign any either, so I'm sure it's fine. Instagaze was super fun because that was I guess to your point where like a director sort of sees your potential and everything. It was filmed on we filmed on Fire Island last year, and we got to just disappear.
Wait, in the Bahamas?
No. Fire Island is just off Long Island, actually.
Wait a minute. Yeah. You got the Salt Shack right over there?
Yes. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. It was
been there before.
Yeah, oh, nice. It was just such an awesome experience because the whole thing is just about like the vibe and the energy of the place. And it's, you know, especially like, I mean, it is a gay getaway destination, right? So immediately, like, you know, the fact that I am straight, I told the director, I was like, yo, I'm straight, but you want me to play this role. That's basically, he's Indian too. And I'm like, okay, clearly I am the you role in this movie, probably. Like, is this okay? And he sort of very quickly just like, it wasn't really about any of that. It was just, you know, him seeing that I sort of understood the idea of what he was trying to put across. And that was super fun. There's like, it was very well organized, very, you know, efficient and big, and we had like stunt people. There was actually a really well-known actor on that as well, Max Emerson, who's been on like a bunch of TV shows and stuff that I've, you know, been a big fan of. And I was like, whoa, like for me it was like I kept telling myself, I'm like, I'm not going to be intimidated. But then I show up and I'm like so intimidated by everyone and everything. But very quickly, that, you know, they made me feel comfortable, and it was just like, those are really fun, where you get to kind of disappear with the crew. You only know each other for like a week. You become best friends, and then you don't see most of them again. But they're a very important part to you, and that's all. I feel like That film's almost done with post-production too. So hopefully at a festival near you soon.
Hey, we got the Tribal Film Festival sponsored by the Astoria Filmmakers Club. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Maybe.
dude, Battle of the Boroughs.
Oh, yeah. No, you gotta lay your claim. You gotta, get ahead.
Well, like we found out like in January, it's kind of a lull for the film festival circuit where,
Right.
it's kind of quiet. The holiday buzz, it's gone. It's even like a bit of a lull because they're preparing for the Oscar ceremony and everything like that. But it really, it provided like an opportunity for like the independent film market, sort of, where like nobody else is doing anything really in the winter. So as far as independent films, if we're not actually filming something, we could get together and just watch. And it's
Of
right,
course.
it's a happy medium between St. Patrick's Day and New Year's, as well as Valentine's Day, where you have sort of like a networking activity that brings us all together, and we get to watch everybody's stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, festivals are really fun. I haven't gone to a ton of festival screenings, but the energy is nice because everyone's there with just the purpose of appreciating it, whatever it is they're going to see, hoping for something unique and interesting. And it's a really nice energy to be around. So that's so exciting. That's cool.
No, it's been a blast. And everybody who's ever been a guest on the podcast, just a fun fact, they get to see any movie they want for free.
Oh, wow. You know what? I'll take that. Are we allowed to curse? I should have asked you this beforehand.
Yes, you are.
Okay, there have been so many instances where I've been like, I kind of want to say fucking shit. And it's just like, it didn't happen. But like, yeah, that's really good. Fuck yeah, is my response to what you just said.
No, dude, like we were so blessed this past year. We went to the Zucker Theater. So
oh wow.
Mathematically, for the amount of film you were able to see 2 hours at a time, a collection of independent films in your block. It was approximately like a good 600 seats and change as far as like 70 seats at a time, where you get to just maybe like go out, get something to eat, come back, and be in a room full of 50 new people. So the audience was definitely there, so we actually were able to like have 13 outstanding volunteers that were just we had a couple that were there for the entire day. Fun, but and the movies were ridiculously good. We had and it was I could talk about them, but it's like those guys got their own podcast, so why waste the time?
And this is about me, like you established earlier on. So I'm gonna hold you to that.
So going back on that note, like I wanted to ask you, as far as like your first credit, could you walk me through Don't Suck?
Yeah, that was that Don't Suck is like a really fun web series that I got to be a part of when I had no idea what, even like how coverage worked. Like it was just like, I'm like, oh, we're doing the whole scene again from a different angle. Like my bare experience was theater, right? So it was me literally the bare bones learning. But it's a series that has done incredibly well, and like they're actually planning on a next season too, which is going to be very exciting. But I remember that being very nice because the creator, director, and co-star along with me, his name's Tyler, and he just moved from Texas, and very, very talented, very well trained and stuff. And I was just it was that, one of the first things, happy to be here. Thank you for, I watch it back now and I'm like, oh gosh, there's so much I wish I knew. I wish I didn't, shake my head as much as I did when I would speak, just in general, because I was just nervous about, the whole thing. But it was a really fun experience, and something that really took off, that I still like have people reach out to me now and be like, oh, I saw you in this. And I was like, oh, wow. Like I did not expect a credit that early to be as meaningful as it's been, but I'm so glad it is,
Oh, where can people get to watch Don't Suck if they want to see it?
It's on YouTube, youtube.com/Don't Suck series, I believe. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, congratulations, dude. So
thank you.
It says it came out in 2018. So what was it like getting that gig? Was it from a friend of a friend or through Backstage?
I auditioned for it. And it was again, it was so early on. So the insecurity level was through the roof. I remember like, I didn't have the perspective at the time, but I remember when I got the message for like, hey, we'd like you to come in to, to read for this part. Um, the message was addressed to someone else. It was probably copy and pasted. So
Okay.
I was like, oh, they don't actually want me to come in. They don't, like, why? They just accidentally sent it to me. I didn't think about it for a day, but I was like, you know what? They sent it to me. I might as well just go in and audition and see what's up. And I auditioned for a different role in it too. But they kind of, I guess, very quickly were like, oh, based on what we've seen, we thought you could be this, but now that we've met you, we actually feel like you're probably more appropriate for this other role, which is the one that worked out. So that's the other thing too that I miss a little bit, is being in the room, because a casting director can immediately get a sense of you. Whereas like now it's all self tapes and on Zoom with like a casting assistant who's not even like, who's just sort of got to record everything and get to the next task that they have. So I miss that element of like, oh, like we talked about earlier, that you can see the potential in someone, right?
Sure.
And that, I guess that was an instance where it worked out in my favor.
Has that been like hey, cool, congratulations? Like
Thank you.
you were even probably going to be casting crashing at the moment,
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
hey, sorry, but it was actually kind of thoughtful that you even thought about that. But you're, you got your break.
No, of course, it really helped. I think it was one of the first things I had on my reel, which was a thing I didn't even know I needed at the time, but it helped. It helped a lot.
It does not hurt to have a reel. It does not hurt to, like, especially for like people don't know you yet. So the best way for us to know you is literally A, get to know you, B, work with you, and
right.
Just get a taste of sort of like, especially with a reel, like one moment at a time, like being photogenic. How do you articulate scene? What's going on? There's a lot of things about reels that maybe could, shoot you in the foot a little bit, but
sure,
it does not hurt to have a reel, honestly.
No, exactly. It is. It's. I mean, because as much as you can get from a headshot, like there's still something about your vibe and your energy that can only really be articulated with a reel. And so, yeah, I think it's also just a way of showcasing your best work, or at least work that you think is versatile enough to. That was the one thing I didn't realize too. I was like, let me just put all of it in there, and I'm like, no one's actually watching this. I have 2 minutes to, showcase what I can do, and it's just about. Yeah, the variety of work you can perform is I think what's most important with a reel, I would say.
Oh, sweet, man. So I guess now that you kind of got a little bit more established, have you been able to work with any like good solid managers or agencies?
Yeah, I do. I've had representation for the last about a year and a half, and it's super important, especially to. Obviously, it's one of those things. It's like a chicken and the egg. It's like, oh, you want to have really good stuff on your resume so an agent listens to you, but you're not going to get that work without an agent. So like, how do you, get there? Right. But it's one of those things where like, I do think it's really important to have a rep eventually. Like even if you don't have a rep right now, like it can be discouraging at first, but it's not a necessity. Especially, at least for me, I'm glad I got the rep when I did. Because, I would have thought, oh, like, why aren't they putting me on the thing, without realizing like, oh, they'll maybe get me an audition every other month. Like it's not, most of the work that I would still get starting out is me by myself. And over time, the switch, it's just a gradual thing. Like, it's not like you, as much as you want to take off as an actor immediately, it's like, oh, this is something that's going to take time for sure. But having a rep is helpful to get on television, especially.
Well, yeah, hands down. I think everybody who's been on the show, and I could attest to that. Yeah, it's kind of, there's an essential element to it.
Yeah, for sure.
But I see here, like, you're not just limited to like acting necessarily. Like, you got a documentary coming out.
Yeah. So Going Nowhere is the documentary. It's the baby. It's the passion project. I am acting in it as well. But essentially it's about, international students in America, mainly focusing on their life after graduation, about, just the complex immigration law they have to navigate in order to,
Sure.
just work and really take advantage of the college experience they've just had, right? I also experienced that firsthand. I was like, wow, this is a very strange way to live. It's not something that like you're actively thinking about as a freshman in college, but like once you graduate, you're like, oh, I like all my American friends have a completely different life now than I do. And it was just such an interesting, unique experience that I didn't know about and hadn't seen too many works about either. So it was like, oh, I kind of want to explore that. So I just started interviewing other students. I didn't want to make it just about my own experience. So I, wanted to talk to as many different students from around the world as I could. And yeah, that's how it started. And I thought, oh, I'll be done with this project in like a week. But
A document. Sorry, bro.
yeah, no, I did. You learn as you go, right? And it was like, oh wow. Then we interviewed students. Then we're like, oh, we should talk to some lawyers and like an economist. And then all of a sudden, you learn all of this information when you're trying to make sense of how the immigration system really works. And you're like, wow, there's a really fascinating story here. So we filmed. Then we like scripted a narrative that we added to it, and it's in the late stages of editing. So we are very close. We're working on music now. We actually we're working with the composer. There was a film that came out last year called Mass, in case you'd heard of it.
Like Mass is in Temple Mass, or like a Catholic Mass?
Yes, that's the name of the movie. It is a very popular, and we somehow the composer on that, like, is working with us. His name's Darren. He's really, really good and really collaborative, and just, he can interpret feelings with music better than any of the other composers that I've, collaborated with in the past. So it was like, wow, this is,
his name is Darren Morzay.
Darren Morsey. Yeah. It's just, it's been such a weird ride, this whole thing. We interviewed like an immigration lawyer who like did the paperwork for like, Trump's wife back in the day. And he's also like the mayor of a town in New Jersey. And we're like, okay, just,
oh, so you actually got to get in front. You actually got to really have like a real conversation with like head politicians that know this field.
Exactly. Yeah. We really got to speak with a lot of, important people in the field. The economist we talked to was, a former advisor at the White House for economics and stuff. And it's like, okay, we really tried to get the biggest bank of knowledge that we could. And then kind of film this narrative thing to highlight the emotional arc of a student, really. And because I never imagined making a documentary in my life. Like as a kid, I mentioned I watched a lot of Hollywood movies and stuff. Documentaries weren't really a part of that. So when I found myself here, I feel like I still used my desire to make a narrative film, but put that in the documentary. So we hopefully have created something unique. It's not my judgment to make, unfortunately, but I think, it's like, it's just interesting that, my debut is a documentary, and that's what's happening. That's insane. I did not expect that in my life.
No, hats off, dude. Like,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Honestly, that is an accomplishment. And I'm curious, so like, did you find that as you were interviewing, it started out as something kind of small, but as you did the deep dive, all of a sudden the minutes became up to like an hour, or is it like more or less like, no, I don't want to say a limited series, but do you feel like it actually like it's going to hit that feature film length where this is actually a big story?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's one of those things that was like, God, I don't even know where to begin, because it's like when I first started just talking to, other students and stuff, I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna, because I was making like content for Instagram, like minute long short film type things, and the medium was wrong, because what's typically is popular on Instagram is like more of the Reels content. Whereas I was like, oh, let me, do pre-production on this video. Let me do post-production. It was just it's not that like my content was better or worse. It just wasn't the right fit, but it was always the very much like the filmmaking method of making things. So I was just making like 2-minute long short films essentially. And that was my idea going into this, was like, oh, I want to make something a little longer. So it felt like, I'm going to make like a 20-minute, documentary short about this. It'll be done in, in a couple months, maybe. But then I spoke to 10 students who, were so nice to just share their story and everything. And like, learned so much about the immigration system. And then when I spoke to the lawyers and everything too, it was like, oh, there is so much more I have to say. So I had like about 20 hours of interview stuff alone.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And you know, like, God, the beautiful but annoying thing about a documentary is just like, it's never ending. Like, I still feel like I'm writing it now. Like, even though we're at the tail end, you still feel like you're writing it, because documentaries really have an infinite number of possibilities in terms of how to tell the story. Because you walk into an interview without a script. I mean, you have a script, you know what you want to get from someone, but you don't know what they're going to say. Like, if an actor improvs a line, that's fine. But the beginning of the scene, the end of the scene, maybe the punchline could change, but like, there is a general sense of what the purpose of it is. Documentary, you go in, you just have to be open to what's going to come your way. And that wasn't just the process in the interviews. Even though we filmed the scripted narrative, that, like, I guess to get a little technical here, I made, like, with all the interviews, I made like what I call the skeleton cut, which was about like 75 minutes of like, oh, floating head and then a black screen. And on the black screen, I would write what's happening. And then a floating head and a black screen. And then, you know, just sort of like, okay, like, this person's going to talk about their life, you know, the day they graduated, and then we're going to see this scene. And then we filmed all those scenes to fit in those things like a puzzle piece.
Oh, you did like a reenaction of what she was describing.
Exactly. We would like the narrative that I mentioned is like semi reenactment. Like, it's a bit stylized. Like, we're very inspired by The Big Short. I think that was sort of like a, you know, a spiritual inspiration, I guess. So it's like, oh, we love the way they told that story about something real world and insane, but ultimately, yeah. So the long story short was like, we're like, oh, we're just going to film these things. As an editor, I'm just going to drop them in and it'll be done. And then you film the things and you get feedback and you watch it and you're like, oh, there's a much more interesting way to now edit this information.
Right.
So the 75 minutes is shrunk down to like 42 is where we're thinking we're landing, maybe just under 40.
You're actually on the border of feature and short, right there.
Welcome to Happy Corner. This project strives to make safe housing areas for stray cats at an affordable price. It's so easy to put together that even your children could have fun making one. Help keep cats and other animals safe with their own little Happy Corner homes. You can help this project become a reality by donating to the GoFundMe page. Happy Corner homes are a great way to show those animals in need it's okay to be happy.
Yes. We're too long for a short. We're too short for a feature. But I think with credits, we'll cross 40 easily. So that'll be beneficial for like festivals.
Unless, you know, I don't know if it counts, but if it's like a TV documentary, like for True TV or something like that, just to kind of, you know, give it side of like, I don't know, sum it up a little bit. Things like that actually work on network TV because they need space for ads, you know, and commercial breaks.
That's true. That's true. I think, you know, it's like, I don't know if this is the type of thing that I foresee being on television, because it started off with me filming with my tiny little camera, interviewing people. So there's already like a technological, you know, step down from what people would expect on TV. But I would hope streaming is the right place for it. We're going to, you know, submit to festivals and stuff, see what kind of traction we can get, and then take it from there. But I would say for now, at least, a festival run would be nice. And then we'll think about, you know, if TV is the place to go or not.
I mean, like, dude, this is pretty cool. So it's not just limited as far as immigration goes, like having the student visa or the work visa or even the marriage visa, fiance visa. It's a combination of multitude of like immigrations.
Yeah, we get into the weeds of it. Obviously, the beginning perspective is from a student visa, but like, you know, we essentially just talk about, you know, what the options are, what kind of stuff, you know, like, and sort of use that to dig into some of the logic of the immigration system, I guess, and how it, you know, what it's like, the way it works, really, if that makes sense. And telling it in this way felt like the only way. I mean, that's the reason any filmmaker will make a movie, is like, oh, if I had one sentence to say, I would just write a tweet. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't go out of my way to spend years on something. You know, this just feels like the only way I could talk about how I feel about this, and express that to people that maybe don't know how unique and unfortunately complicated this whole process is. Because I mean, yeah, for like international students, like I won't just speak for myself. It's from the time you graduate, your life is just so different. And the idea that like, you know, you want to figure out your early 20s, you want to do everything everyone else in their early 20s is doing. You just graduated college, you're already like far away from home. You have to then reckon with the idea that like your time is limited, and also just the fact that, you know, it's not really up to you. You're sort of stripped of choice with a lot of things when it comes to your own future in a way that no citizen will experience, in a way that 99% of the people in this country will not have to ever experience, which good for them. But it does create for, you know, a very specific story that I think is, and also we have to recognize that, you know, what we are experiencing as, you know, students who, for the most part, can at least afford to fly themselves to America, right? And, you know, we are still on the very lucky side of immigration, if that's what we are to say. There's, you know, issues at the border, people's, you know, families being separated and stuff. That's a whole other, like, you know, issue that I don't have the, you know, expertise to highlight as much. But our story still will shine a light on immigration in general, and hopefully enlighten the way we look at the real devastating issue that is happening at the border.
Not just like, you mean the border here, like in like Mexico, for example?
Yeah. Sorry, the U.S.-Mexico border. I guess, I mean, that's what most people think about when they think of the border and immigration and stuff. But
like the number one topic, you know, I mean, the Canadian border is never talked about because it's like, I guess it's just the biggest one, and what's to say, eh?
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, it's really just, you know, we had to really, and again, that was the whole MO from the beginning, was like, I don't want it to just be about my own specific personal experience when I'm talking about something as grand as immigration law. So, let me interview other people. Let me, you know, try to look at this from every angle. And I was grateful too, when I was interviewing people, you know, as a person who's going to initially tell a story about immigration, you're like, oh, I want to find out the dirty little secret, and I want to find out that I am right and woe is me and stuff. But then you have people that, you know, I learned so much talking to other students and to lawyers, and I got so much perspective that it was very helpful for me to just garner, you know, confidence in my own life, being like, yeah, maybe I have a bit of growing up to do as well myself. And
so I mean,
like,
especially when you're in your 20s, dude, like,
exactly.
At least you recognize that there's so much room for growth in yourself, but you're never going to find out unless you're actually challenged by asking and answering certain questions and living a little bit.
Exactly. And yeah, I was grateful to have learned everything I have. Still, I'm learning, not just about filmmaking in general, but about immigration itself. It's really, it's interesting. That's all I'll say. I think the movie will speak and say everything else I have to say on it, but I will just say immigration is fascinating and is worth studying and trying to make sense of.
I think, honestly, like, it's really, you know, it's really hard, especially as I think I'm almost 100% sure I'm second generation immigrant as well, I guess, or not immigrant, but I'm Americanized because like my grandparents came like with their parents on the boat, you know, settled in Brooklyn.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, like, dude, yeah, I'm like, I am like, I'm product, and I'm the trickle down evident of immigration from both sides of the family. You know, there's nothing there's no Dutch in my blood at all. You know, I got the Irish, I got the Italian, I got the Jew. I'm the Brooklyn mutt.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Man. So like, no, like there was a film that really did touch on a little bit of immigration in their documentary on like what it actually was to immigrate to the United States. And it was almost like, I don't know how to really describe it justly, but it almost seemed like an opportunity was presenting itself for a better life. Goes without saying, but we were actually like all of our ancestors up into like as far as I know were actually almost recruited in a sense, to come to the United States when we were, really colonizing, expanding to the West. And we were asked to come over here through the shipping companies, in a sense, to sell the American dream, so that these companies, the shipping companies, could actually stay in business and, make their money and whatnot, because transportation was the big thing. But we were the cheap labor, our ancestors, to come over and to start, be the cheap labor, which is what Gangs of New York talked about very briefly. I don't know if you're familiar with Gangs of New York.
Yes, of course.
But there was a serious bias for those who've established themselves here, which I'm sure immigration, it kind of touches on the subject, where cheap labor is coming in, where it seems like it's almost like a vicious cycle. And we're kind of born on different sides of that spectrum, because it was literally just the coin or the hand that we're dealt. It's just a curious thing. What is immigration and what does it actually mean? What is the point of it? And how am I less of an immigrant, regardless of being born here, naturalized here, certified to be here, citizenship? But how much of that do I actually have a choice as well, as even though as a citizen, what am I obligated out of existing here in these borders, just like you, that I'm limited to do? What are my limitations, or what do we have more in common?
I mean, that's an incredibly articulate way of putting it. So thank you for that, for real.
That was long-winded. My bad.
No. I appreciate it. No, there's passion. That's the thing. There's passion about it, not just in terms of your own personal experience, but in truly trying to understand it. And that's the point. Is the thing that people forget is borders and everything like this. These are all things that were man-made and created at some point. Earth didn't exist with countries in and of itself. So I think once we start to reckon with that, it's not about I'm not saying that first point and then suddenly saying, oh, so we should get rid of all the borders right away and, just all be one and hold hands, as idyllic as that would be. Yeah. But even in a practical sense, it's just, I think people, when you're born into a world like this that exists with 200 plus countries, that, you may be in a country like America that, provides you with, so many wonderful privileges to most of its citizens, not all, but to most of its citizens. There is sort of an ignorance to the idea that immigration is a system that is ever evolving, even when people argue about laws and stuff, they don't realize that these laws were created at one point, disputed, and have evolved over time, right? Yeah. And it's similar with immigration. It's again, purely speaking from the perspective of students, I don't, because again, what is happening at the border is what we need to talk about. But when it comes to students, at least, it's it's not about, I don't think any student would be let me in. I've, spent my years here. I deserve it. I think that's patting ourselves too much on the back. But the truth is present a logic to me that allows me to, that doesn't ignore me as an individual, right? I think that's the issue. Whereas immigration, as you said, the cheap labor thing too is oh, you need a work visa, for example. Well, you have to have a very specialized skill to get that, right? You have to have, there's literally something called an LCA, which is a labor certification of some kind that proves that the company could not find an American citizen for a role, that then allows you to apply for the work visa to begin with, right? So it's things like that. It's you're sort of back to being a number. You're sort of back to being a commodity almost to that extent, which I understand why a country, I understand why a country would, want to or sort of view grand scheme migration in that sense, but it does ignore the point of being human and the point of having an experience to begin with, and that's with a top-down look towards most things, unfortunately, but immigration specifically, because it's the unique difference is you are tied to a place and a surrounding environment that can be taken away from you, which is not always the case unless you're in prison, obviously, then that's also a different situation right there and far worse. But those are, I would say, the only two instances I can think of where your environment is at stake, Yeah. And what that means for your I could be the smartest, most overachieving, person in my college. I could have this high paying job. But in spite of that, you're telling me the work visa is a lottery, so it doesn't really matter. what
Right.
I've
Yeah.
achieved.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Was it hard for you in that like switch where you went from student now to find work?
It definitely was. Yeah. I mean, I've had a long journey. I've been in America for almost 9 years now. And, I'm thankfully now in a more comfortable place where, I can pursue acting full time, be part of the film industry. But it was something that took a while. It was something that, even in school restricts you from the kind of work you can do. Like something as simple as like, if you're a student that even has a business idea in school, right? You're not really authorized to start that business. You are here to study and do what you're supposed to in college. There's no life outside of that, And I find, yeah.
I was gonna say like that yes, that is true, but I kind of discovered a loophole running a nonprofit.
Oh, interesting. I mean, do tell, I guess.
Yeah, fun fact, you don't have to be a citizen of the United States to actually own or run a nonprofit in the state of New York.
Interesting.
So like even though remotely, you could actually have your like home address like in Mumbai, live while you're going to school, but literally operate your nonprofit from either Mumbai or from your laptop and operate whatever its mission is, whether it's immigration law or affordable housing or something. As long as you have two other people on the docket where you got yourself a 501c3 and you could actually pay yourself while in school.
Interesting. That is good to know. I mean, I still, I would for the sake of, just being safe, I would say talk to a lawyer. I'm not, my hunch is, yeah.
I got problems with all these restrictions where it's like, yo, bro, like we're not helping anybody by having these regulations. And it's like, like, what do you expect for these people to do to survive other than get like, I don't know, like you would prefer to them be on welfare than actually help, like have them like get a job in a space of their choice, run a business in a space of their choice. I mean, so that's what really bothers me about sort of like the evolution of immigration over the last 100 years, because I was born into sort of like this, I was born here. But my family, no, they were not. Like there's countless members of my family that operated businesses. I probably am the only one who ever did a nonprofit. Okay. But that's not like what I really wanted to say is that we were kind of like, we were just literally, I would say just for the majority of us, we didn't actually just like accept the hands that we were dealt. It does seem like that maybe there is a bit of advantage by living here, even though we're of the same cloth, not your son or your grandson, but you're at more or less a disadvantage because I have access to resources that you don't because I was born here. Meanwhile, I'm only 1 or 2 generations away from being in his exact same circumstance. So what the fuck?
It's like, I mean, the logic of, weirdly enough, like not a ton of countries actually have birthright citizenship. A lot of it, I think, is based on your parents' citizenship. US is a rare case, as I've learned recently, but it's like, it's one of those things that, I mean, yeah, like it's just sort of an operating principle most countries have is like, are you a citizen? There's like tax reasons for that, which I get, but again, the way like it practically works out because of those, grand scheme reasons is like, I'm sitting on this podcast with you, right? We're just talking. I'm talking about my career. You're talking about, your life, your career as well. But in a year's time, I might not be here. And I mean, it's just kind of a thing that like, even if I do want to extend my stay beyond, it's still something that's not really up to me. In spite of me abiding by the same rules as you, in spite of me working just as hard, it won't matter ultimately. In spite of the fact that I've spent almost 10 years here now, built a social circle, a life. Obviously, I mean, I'm like, as much as my parents are in India and that is where my home is, it's still a thing of like, I'm not gonna be a robot when I'm in America, right? I'm not going to just, you're making some good moves. And it seems like you're pursuing a very unique niche of a dream where you could have an amazing career and actually like artistically contribute to society where there's more value in the artistic contribution to society that money can't really like validate in a sense, it's a whole different form of values that I'd say. For sure. Yeah, no, and I appreciate that again. Thank you. It's just one of those things that, it's just, I think, something that needs to be examined more and thought about more and hopefully talked about more. Because I think there's room for improvement. The fact that there's an immigration system alone means that a country recognizes that there is, dare I say it, value in bringing people from their perspective, into the country. But it's still something that I think can be perfected, and it's far from it, in my personal opinion, right now.
No, dude, and like I really appreciate you sharing. I'm curious because Going Nowhere, is that what like why'd you pick the title?
The title was an interesting one. It sort of it works in a few ways, but I think just the idea of place physically, but also in terms of your life, seems so important to the movie. Like to a postgraduate student alone, like where you are in life is very important in that metaphorical sense, in that figurative sense. But to a foreigner, like physically where you are is also a big thing. And so I think the title really was just a way of, it is both looking at the future, but also talking about kind of where we are in both those contexts, was sort of the idea. And hopefully when you get to see the film, you'll have more of an opinion on the title. But that was the general basis of why it was sort of the idea.
I love the word nowhere because it's split into two different words.
Yeah, I mean, it is something that has, a ton of, I guess because nowhere isn't a thing that actually exists. If you think about it, it's just like, you can't physically point at nowhere. It's not a thing that actually tangibly exists. And hopefully that, just adds to the movie going experience for some people. The wacky title.
Honestly, I'm excited. I'm excited for it. And
I appreciate that.
I really wanted to circle back really quick though.
Sure.
You had mentioned earlier, when we're doing like a bit of a prep, and I did want to actually touch base on your favorite movie, and you told me it was The Social Network.
The Social Network is it's always such a hard question, and I think for many years I kept changing my answer.
It's really hard to pick one. I get it, but if it's not that one, there's
I mean, I've landed on The Social Network because it is just it. I'm gonna try and keep this as short as I can of how amazing I think it is, because I mean, David Fincher is rightly a perfectionist, and you see it on screen in The Social Network with the smallest of camera movements just being so impactful and meaningful. And of course, you could talk about the actors and the technical stuff. And this is not me brushing it off. This is me just saying, it's all perfect. But not only is it a very smooth movie, I would say, just in terms of the pace and the energy, but it's God, I have to hold my head at how good it is. It's got two things. One, it's got the perfect interaction between character and motivation at every moment. That they sort of spiral into each other in every beat of the film. With every word that's written, there's always a full, complete, dense understanding of character and dense understanding of the reason they're doing what they're doing, which I think is amazing and very prevalent. If you ever get the chance to rewatch it, just go on YouTube. There's a scene where Justin Timberlake's character shows up.
Mr. Napster.
Mr. Sean Parker, he shows up to the restaurant where Eduardo, Mark, and Eduardo's girlfriend, Christy, are sitting. And there's a brief montage that happens. But from the moment Justin Timberlake walks in, you can look at every single shot and pick out 5 things that are happening and completely I'm sure you didn't even notice this, but Justin Timberlake walks in and he introduces himself. And then it's a shot of, Mark, Eduardo, Christy. And as Eduardo's saying hello, he starts to put his arm around his girlfriend, just behind his chair. The simplest and subtlest thing. You're already focused on how Andrew Garfield is skeptical about, Justin Timberlake's character, but he's also putting the arm around his girlfriend, because he's he senses that this is a womanizer kind of guy, even though that's not the focus of the scene at all. It's another undercurrent to what's happening. And it's just moments like that exist throughout the film. It's amazing. And the second thing, just to finish that off, is it's just also, as much as people like, oh, it's the Facebook movie, and yeah, okay, there's liberties in terms of what happened.
Yeah,
It's
not to mention the 4 Oscars, but yeah, please.
Yes, exactly. It does such a good job of just, to me, the way I've read the movie for the last 10 watches, it's like, oh, it's just a guy in the pursuit of being cool, and how he loses sight of what's important in life, which is real friendship.
Right.
And how amazing to do that in a movie that talks about the invention of virtual friendship. But it's really just like, Mark just wants to be the hottest guy on campus, and he makes decisions accordingly and learns to regret it. And I think that's fantastic.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the poor guy in real life had to go to Congress a few times.
Testify, yeah.
Sorry, Senator, blah, blah, blah.
Mm. Yeah, gosh, those are fun to watch as well.
So, like, to what you were saying before, as far as like what's happening, like the under part in theater as well as acting. One of my best acting teachers of all time was Carol Kassendeek, and she really spoke deeply about when you're acting, all of these subtlety moments and what a director does with something like that. And to David's credit, like you were talking about, that's actually called orchestration, where he's actually creating sort of like a visual symphony. Basically, like the text is literally like those bullet points that you would have in the orchestra. We're the instruments that actually carry that out, but there's sort of like more to it where it's got to be orchestrated in a certain way to capture that sense of emotionality. Shout out Tropic Thunder. but that's what a director really does. And that is really the hardest thing to really pull off, is like, call it divine orchestration, but it actually got nominated for best director or best achievement in directing with The Social Network. Your boy David Fincher there.
Yeah, he got nominated. The film won a few Oscars. I believe he might have won a Golden Globe for that as well, if I'm not mistaken. But I've directed something lengthy one time, and thank God I'm editing it, so I can just, like, with a great amount of shame, realize all the mistakes I think I made. Because directing truly is just such like an all-seeing process. You have to know so much about each department. You have to know the purpose. You have to know the potential, again, as we talked about earlier, of every little thing you can do. And directing as well, so much of it is communication. At least what I've really benefited from as acting now is, like, I've learned the way directors communicate with actors. I've learned what's comfortable with me, but I've also seen them talk to a lighting person and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, you have to know not just what your idea is, but when you're running a set, like The Social Network, there's probably hundreds of people on set. If you can't communicate what you want, other than like, put this 5 inches to the right, like if you can't emotionally communicate what you want,
right,
you're screwed. So you gotta be able to, I guess, learn that language too, because it's what's really gonna allow you to elevate your work ultimately.
It's funny you mentioned that before, because I heard a rumor, and it's got to be true because I didn't know it, but it kind of makes sense. It actually says they won the Oscar for film editing. Yes. And it also ties into their other 2 wins in a sense, because they did win best music, as also with sound mixing. I heard and like this goes back to like 2010 when they were filming it. I was in acting school, and it was right around that time, conservatory training. Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. But anyway, I was with my movement teacher, and when we were literally like having conversation, when we were talking about The Social Network at the time, the opening scene, they're at the bar, just kick off the entire movie, boyfriend girlfriend scene. They did that take, I heard, over 115 times.
I heard for that scene 99.
Dude.
But I know for another Fincher movie, might have been either Fight Club or Zodiac, I'm not sure, there was a scene they did over 100 times. Yes, David Fincher's logic. So I've heard his interviews. I've like seen the behind the scenes of that. I think his idea is like, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring in all these people to do all this thing. What's the point of rushing it now that we spent all this money, brought everyone to Boston or wherever they're filming?
Because you know why, dude? Like, if I were the director and if I had to put logic to that, it's probably not the case, but it's a fun little acting observation. So, like, we do know, like, now that's really their breakup scene, but they weren't broken up when they went there, right?
Yes.
So, like, they're not breaking up 99 times. They're not. That's not. I don't think that's what these actors maybe have needed to help contribute to their performance. And other than having to do it, I think it really may have come down to establishing that solid relationship as boyfriend and girlfriend, where it's literally like they had to. It almost seemed like Jesse treated the character for a moment where this is just another date, you know?
Yes.
You know, so I think there had to be a little bit of like substance for the lead actress as well. Like, we've been on 99 dates, and where are we going?
100%. That's something that definitely can help, you know, an actor building, because rehearsals and stuff are beneficial for things like that. But ultimately, when you're on set, like, there is as much prep work as you can do. When you're in the environment, you got to throw it all away.
The energy of the room.
Yeah.
And it's just surfaced.
And exactly. And the best feeling as an actor, I think, is when the words just fall out of your mouth, when the feeling just exists, when you're present but not fully conscious of what you're doing, but you are still in control. I think that's such a beautiful feeling to have. And I think, to me, that comes a lot with repetition. Now, I'm not going to say that Jesse Eisenberg and Rooney Mara didn't already do the prep to get there, because they're some of the most incredible actors, you know, the world has to offer. But I will say that, like, doing something like that 99 times for, you know, someone like David Fincher is like, it just goes to show that, yeah, in movies, every moment matters, every word matters, every beat is important. And that's something I used to be very skeptical of early on. I was like, you're just overthinking it. You know, like when my brother was like 16, 17 telling me about this, I'm like, you're just overthinking it. I was like 12. I was like, what is he talking about? But then I watch a movie and I break it down, and it's like, I don't think most audience members realize that, which is fine. It's not their job to sit and, you know, break down every moment of a movie and be like, oh, the camera's pushing in now, which is why I'm feeling this, which is blah, blah, blah. Like, they don't, that's not the audience's purpose. That's purely the director and filmmaker's purpose. But you can ultimately, when you leave a movie with a feeling, it is the combination of every decision that's made that's contributing to that feeling. And so it's like, every moment, every beat matters. You know, it's not just about the timing of an edit or a song. It's, oh, why does this character, you know, if this character pauses for an extra half a second, the scene means something completely different now. You know, it's now a very awkward pause. Oh, it's now a strange pause. Oh, it's just, every little thing matters so very much. And it's awesome to see. And I think it all came together in The Social Network for me. So that's probably why it is my favorite. Yeah.
Dude, like, I'm really glad to have gotten a chance to meet you, dude. Like, this is really impressive, you know, your story, your background, and now really taking a shot of like creating your own piece, actually being able to not critique necessarily, but really have like sort of like a backside understanding on how a film is made and like why certain decisions creatively from a director or a cinematographer are actually doing, and what that translate for the actor, and putting yourself just like in the audience seat sometimes, like, you don't catch yourself like critiquing, saying, no, that person this should have happened, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when I'm watching, and thank you for the kind words again, it's been great talking to you too. But sometimes when I am watching, it takes me a moment I feel like it depends. If I'm really invested in the film and just along for the ride, I don't think about that stuff. I sort of think about it after the fact. I always try to take note of it after the fact as much as I can. But sometimes if there's a movie where something stands out to me really good, or, you know, otherwise, like it sort of gets me in that mode of thinking as I go. I think, weirdly enough, the last movie I saw where I completely was just in it and had to reflect on why I loved it so much after the fact was The Whale with Brendan Fraser.
Yeah, I got it here.
It's because I left that movie just shaking, like truly like, whoa. And then I watch clips from it back and I'm like, it's the most simple camera setup. It's the most simple, like, oh, we're just in a room. And
it was a play.
It didn't even hit me until after, when someone told me it was based off a play. I'm like, oh, this makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's in spite of that, it is still just so perfectly orchestrating every little thing that it didn't matter, like, and again, that was a nice feeling to have of like, oh, I'm just an audience member just here to experience this. I don't want to say it's harder for me to have that, maybe just because I think about it so much on a day-to-day now, but it is an experience that I think most people have. And it's really what makes, the movies so fun.
Yeah, it actually got me a little teary because like, I never saw my mom like cry, but when she watched The Whale, I looked to my right and she's like there's a puddle. Like it was just like one of those things where it's like, I should be crying more during The Whale, but it's like, I did watch it a second time and it's like,
right.
Being a man could really be challenging sometimes. This guy's story is very unique, but what a beautiful way to reconnect with your daughter.
Yes.
When there's a chance. Oh my God, dude, it's making me cry right now. No, stop. Yeah. Hold it in, dude. Hold it in.
Oh man.
First of all, Sushant, thank you so much for coming on the AFC podcast. I cannot wait to see the trailer for Going Nowhere. Please, when that is ready, do not hesitate. Yes. I would love to see it. Before we wrap up, we always have a little closing segment called The Right Words at the Right Time.
Okay.
So once upon a time, I was reading a book called The Right Words at the Right Time. And it was a collective of interviews and essays by Marcy Hopkins. And in that book was politicians, athletes, modern day celebrities, or at least for 2005, 6, 7, but all well-known names that we know today without question. They always had the right words at the right time that stuck with them through their journey to get to the point where they found they were at their highest achievement, where they never forgot what they said. And my curiosity was, has anybody ever said the right words at the right time to you that have been with you for better or worse, or perhaps maybe you just have words of your own that you'd like to share?
Oh, that's a big question. And again, thanks for having me, but this is, I'm trying to think of pieces of advice I've got. I don't know if there's any specific, this one person, I've had very encouraging parents and my brother, which has always been nice, but I think all of the advice is amalgamated into the words, fuck it, which means two things to me, means three things. First, it means fuck it in like, if I didn't get a role, if I didn't, if things didn't go the way I thought they were going to, fuck it. It's okay. As long as I tried, it's okay. The second is like, a little bit more energetic of like, let's do this. Like, fuck it, let's go. It's sort of like why there's always cold feet, even gigs that I've really wanted so bad. There is always an ounce the night before of like, I could just not go, which is not a thing I have ever done or will ever do. But there is that, that weird sting in your heart that almost is nervous about it. And it's like, no, fuck it. This is what you want to do. You should go. And most importantly, it's like the fuck it of when you're on set, it's like, do the prep, do your work. And when you show up, just remember that, I used to really struggle with this thing of like, I need to prove to them that I earned this job, when I would be on a set. But then I realized I'm like, I already did that. That's the reason I got the job, So I'm like, on set, I have nothing to prove. I just have to do the best work I can. And whatever prep I've done, whatever, work I've done, like, sometimes you throw it out the window, sometimes you don't, but it's just like, the moment you walk on a set, you're like, fuck it, I'm here. Let's go. Like, I don't think that, I guess those are two different ways of saying fuck it, not three. The point is, fuck it if it sucks, and fuck it, let's go if it's good. I hope that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, dude. And
Great.
Sometimes, honestly, sometimes call it an affirmation, but you sometimes just need to hear it.
100%. Because a big thing I do, honestly, especially if I'm feeling a bit down about where I am, how I'm performing when it comes to film and stuff. I do listen to a ton of podcasts, and, you know, whether it's this or, you know, anything else, there's a ton of podcasts to listen to of just other actors and people in the business talking about their experience. And it's nice because it is a very singular profession, right? Especially as an actor, you're
100%.
your best case is you're on a project for 3 months in another country, and then you're not going to see those people for so long, and you're going to be disconnected, and you're going to be on a different project that most of those people won't be on, you know? And it's like, you are creating your own very specific journey. And it's like the reminder that while you are alone, you aren't lonely in the way you're feeling about the industry and your work is very important. So I think just, listening to other creators has been very helpful for me. So fuck it, you should listen to other creators, I guess. Yeah.
Very well said, man. And thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a great way to end the day. And I always leave the show off with a message from the Astoria Filmmakers Club. And it's real simple. It's always remember to never forget your community, the creativity, and find the joy in every single thing that you do, man.
Hell yeah. And fuck it.
And fuck it. You enjoy it. You enjoy your evening. Thank you so much. And we will see you next time.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me, and have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Ciao, everybody. See you on the next one.
Bye.